Well, it's one of the biggest scams to have hit our country's defense establishment since Bofors, implicating a former Air Force chief as well. Now more details are emerging of a complex money trail by which kickbacks were routed to India, and the political chorus is growing louder. As the chopper scam looks all set to overshadow the budget session of Parliament, today the government took the first steps to cancel the over 3,500 crore rupee VVIP chopper deal with Augusta Westland. The government issued a show cause notice to Augusta Westland, the firm which manufactures the AW101 chopper, 12 of which were to be inducted into the Indian Air Force to be used by VVIPs. Augusta Westland has been given 7 days to reply on the charges of bribery. An integrity pact in the contract allows the government to cancel this deal if any kickbacks were paid. But in all of this, let's continue our focus on that Italian prosecutor's report, that same report which speaks about the role of middlemen in India in this deal. Let's take a look at some of the main points. Money was transferred, says the report, to Air Chief Marshal S. Tyagi between 2004 and 2007. Tyagi is a public official. He acted contrary to his official duties. International crimes resulted in corruption of public officials in India. Very strong words. Justification to pay for intermediaries is an offence of a criminal nature. The Tyagi brothers promised and at least partly transferred money to the ex-air chief. 400,000 euros were transferred to a company, IDS India. We now know that to be a shell company for use by middlemen, by the Tyagi's lawyers and by the Tyagi family. Now, Guido Hashka, a middleman in this deal, met Julie Tyagi, also known as Sanjeev Tyagi, at a family marriage in Lugano. Hashka met Air Chief Marshal Tyagi 6 to 7 times personally. So again, the role of the former Air Chief coming into sharp question as far as the points raised in this prosecutor's report is concerned. The first time that the Air Chief actually met some of these middlemen, the first time was with a delegation of Finmeccanica. That's when there was this exchange, the first time that it actually happened. Hashka once greeted Air Chief Marshal Tyagi apparently by touching his feet. All right, well, let's now continue to look at the middlemen, the key players in all of this, how that scam money was routed to India. So let's just take a look at the money trail. Now remember, the bribe amount was 51 million euros. How did that 51 million get to India? It got through middlemen. There were 3 primary middlemen: Guido Hashka and Carlos Geroso. They worked very closely together, and Christian Michel. Now Michel, very little is known about him except that he operates in Dubai and the United Kingdom. 20 million euros was given to Hashka and to Geroso, and Michel got 30 million euros. Now the Tyagi brothers apparently got their money from Hashka and Geroso. 20 million euros was the amount that the two had, of which 12 million euros landed up with the Tyagi brothers. And the allegation is that this money was apparently routed, some of it, to the former Air Chief S.P. Tyagi, though it should be mentioned that there has never been an instance when the Italian and the international middlemen were present when there was actually an alleged transfer of money to the former Air Chief. Now, how were the bribes routed to India in terms of shell companies? How does anyone transfer such a large amount of 51 million euros without being caught? Well, here's how it actually happened, and yes, these people evidently are in the process of being caught. All right, well, it all begins with Finmeccanica. Now, Finmeccanica is the mother company for Augusta Westland. Augusta Westland manufactures the AW101 VVIP choppers. That's the chopper in question. Finmeccanica apparently set up front companies, shell companies, IDS in Tunisia and IDS in India. We do not know very much about this except for the fact that IDS India doesn't exist on the registrar of companies, and apparently IDS Tunisia, even if it did exist, has subsequently folded up. But money was apparently transferred here and ultimately went to India. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. There is a legit company, a legitimate company in India called IDS Infotech. It exists in Chandigarh. It's got international offices. It deals with software, among other things. This particular company had a deal with Finmeccanica and with Augusta Westland. They were handling a particular contract for Augusta Westland. That contract and nothing else was acquired by a company called Aeromatrix in 2009. Now, 2009, very critical, because 2009 is when the Cabinet Committee on Security was looking very closely at this deal. So the Augusta Westland part of this contract was acquired by Aeromatrix, and there you have it. Who were the directors of Aeromatrix? Guido Hashka and Carlo Geroso, the same middlemen that we've been referring to. Now, in all of this, who is the family? The words "the family" was used a couple of times in the prosecutor's report. Now, a lot of people believe that given the fact that the Tyagi family has been mentioned repeatedly, the family refers to the Tyagi family. However, it appears that in another reference to the family, there could be an implication that the family is not the Tyagis. This is because of a conversation between Hashka, one of the key middlemen, and the other intermediaries and middlemen in this, who had reached some sort of an agreement to actually lower their amount of money which was due to them as commissions, in order that 28 million euros ultimately went to the family. Now, the BJP has been alluding, including on India Decides at 9, that this may not necessarily be the Tyagis, but they aren't directly saying whether they're pointing fingers at the Gandhis as yet. But here's what the prosecutor's report has to say. The family wants the arrangement to be observed with regard to 28 million euros. This was part of the deposition which was made by by a few people to the prosecutors in Italy. One agreement was for 42 million euros with the team, that's the team of middlemen. The other was for 28 million euros with the family. So, who is that family? This is what the BJP is alleging, and we will have Prakash Javadekar as well on this program in a few moments.
In the charge sheet prepared in Italy, before the Italian court, the charge sheet mentions that rupees 200 crores were paid to the first family. There is mention of the family. The family. Who is this the family? कौन सा ये परिवार है जिसको 200 करोड़ रुपए की बात 2 बार इटली के न्यायालय के समक्ष 2 बार जिसका उल्लेख है परिवार का, वो कौन परिवार है?
Well, now finally the government is breaking its silence and is answering a lot of questions. A little while earlier I spoke to the Foreign Minister Salman Khurshid. I began by asking Mr. Khurshid, with a show cause having been served to Augusta Westland, is this the beginning of the end of this company, Finmeccanica, the parent company and the other companies in India? Is this the beginning of the end? This is what Mr. Khurshid had to say.
I think it's very important in any of these matters not to jump to conclusions, but to allow the lawful procedures to work themselves out. Because doubt has been cast on their dealings with India due to an investigation at the other end, at the Italian end, I think it was important for us to respond. And one way to respond is to give the matter for investigation to the CBI, and the other way to respond is in terms of civil consequences, which is why the show cause notice would have been issued. But I don't think you should come to any conclusions on the basis of a show cause notice, because the show cause notice is actually an opportunity for the other person to explain their conduct, and action takes place only if the conduct is not satisfactorily explained.
Mr. Khurshid, the BJP wants a time-bound, court-monitored special investigation into this scam. Are you willing to accept this? Is the government willing to accept this?
Well, as I understand, we are open to a dialogue on this. The decision obviously will have to be taken by the concerned agencies and the concerned part of government. I mean, this is a decision that will have to be taken by the Ministry of Defence, as yes, indeed by the Home Ministry. And I'm sure that they will listen to any sage and sensible advice. I think the BJP should talk to us rather than scream and shout. Because let's not forget that there are issues on this that are distracting from the main concern, and those issues pertain to decisions that were taken during the NDA government. I'm not passing blame, I'm only explaining facts. that there are decisions that they took, perhaps the right ones, and those decisions are what led finally to the conclusion of the contract. But in the conclusion of the contract, if there are any matters that are of a suspicious nature or an unwholesome nature, as seems to be the indication by the Italian investigation, then they must be taken to a logical conclusion, and that's what we will do, and that was the intention in giving this matter over to the CBI.
But Mr. Khurshid, the government has been criticized for going slow in ordering an inquiry, even though several of these allegations of corruption are not new. Why has it taken so long for the government to react? The media seem to have copies of this report. A lot has been asked about why the CBI wasn't pushed into investigations earlier on.
Well, you know that Italian jurisdiction is an autonomous and independent jurisdiction of a sovereign state. There are diplomatic procedures by which you can try to reach. I mean, the Italians were reaching out to us to get their Marines released, but what were we saying? We were saying that the matter is in court, and the courts are independent of the executive. But the courts believe in rule of law, and the courts of our country are outstanding, and they will give justice. So now if someone says at the Italian end that their foreign ministry didn't do enough to get the Marines released, I think that would not be fair. And equally, it would not be fair to say that we didn't do enough. We were not going to declare war for documents. All we could do is to use persuasion. And even at the Italian end, they obviously took some time to come to a conclusion that an arrest was appropriate. Nobody is asking questions as to why the arrest wasn't done 3 months ago. They must have reached a conclusion that allowed for a decision about an arrest now, and therefore we also take it that this is an important turning point at which we can proceed with an investigation in which documents, materials and things sought by the CBI can actually be sought through court proceedings.
So what about the money trail in India? 51 million euros were channeled to India. Serious questions being asked about shell companies or front companies in India. Are we any closer to knowing the truth of this?
I'm sure that we have very competent people sniffing the money trail or any trail. It's not really frankly fair for me to speculate or to give half-baked information. Obviously, reputations are always involved when investigations of this nature takes place, and I think it's important that the public interest prevail, which is both that the truth should be known, that defaulting people should be punished or made accountable, and that no innocent person is unnecessarily dragged into a controversy. So, as the investigation proceeds, the investigating agencies themselves will share the information that they feel will be justified to be shared with the public.